Allegany, they'll take you home. They'll torture the land that you wanted to roam. And out on the road, they'll haul it in. The truckloads of poison and they need a sin. Oh, Allegany, they'll break your back, don't you know? Your future depends on the people who love you so. And out on the road, they're standing in line. They're 5,000 strong and they've made up their minds.
My name is Bill Coch. I was a doctor, general practitioner in Andover from 1975 till maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Great. And did you grow up around this area, or did you come from?
No, I grew up on Long Island, suburban New York.
Okay, good. And so you came here as part of...
I came here under the National Health Service Corps program because I wanted to go to an underserved area. And this was, seemed to meet what I wanted. It was definitely an underserved area, it still is. And had a university and the cultural things that they have nearby.
And so maybe describe some of your, the way that you were involved with the movement.
So at least, this is my recollection, it seemed to start in the Alfred area, and most of the people I was friends with. Stuart Campbell, Tom Peterson, Gary, and at least not friends with, we knew each other, we saw each other at gatherings, social gatherings. And so I think when that started, the word went out quickly and meetings started. I was not a leader of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there were some of the smaller meetings first, I think, that were held in Almond, like the
Steve Myers,
Okay.
Steve was kind of a pivotal figure in this. Personally, I'm not a mover and a shaker, and people who would, get something going.
It seemed like there was a lot of enthusiasm to get that ball rolling from lots of people. So
There was, and they were all people I knew and trusted, and so it was kind of a no-brainer that you'd listen to them, and and after you heard the whole thing.
Yeah, and your initial reaction was one of, well, maybe I should just ask you what your initial reaction was to the thought of a dump here. Was it overwhelmingly negative? Was it considering of different options, or?
I would say my overwhelming first reaction was, I grew up in a pretty affluent area on Long Island, suburbia, and the amount of poverty that was here, especially at that time, but still, people living in hovels and having nothing, was kind of outraged that they would select this area for to dispose of all this stuff. I understand, I know all the maps and the overlays, and they had all these criteria, and these were the only ones that met it, and blah, blah, blah. But, at that time, and maybe still, we were the poorest New York county. And, to be a dump, just from a political, social point of view, outraged me.
And so, did you attend that really large meeting in Belfast?
Yes.
Yeah, what was that like?
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure other people have told you this, but first of all, it was packed. I was lucky to get in and get up near the front. somebody said that there's a lot of Amish up there. And when they were told of it, they came and they asked, should we bring our guns?
Oh, interesting.
And nobody's told you that before?
No, not about the Amish.
Yeah.
No, interesting, okay.
And, for me, the most inspirational moment was Steve Myers read from the Constitution about when, blah, 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 that you have an obligation to overthrow it or something like that. It was very moving at that time.
And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Yes! That when any government becomes destructive of this end, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such a form as they shall seem most likely to affect their safety and their happiness. I didn't write those words. Our founding fathers.
Was that your first initial impression of the Siting Commission members at that meeting?
Some of them seemed reasonable people. Mm-hmm. Some of them seemed like they didn't want to be there. They were tasked with this. They thought, and from from another point of view, I got it. I saw why. There's all this waste. It's got to go somewhere. The laws say it has to stay within your state borders. So I wasn't totally unsympathetic from a scientific, kind of practical point of view about the fact that it was being, and I was part of that. I was a doctor. I ordered nuclear scans and nuclear treatments, and I know that generates some waste, and it's got to go somewhere, and it's probably not best to keep it in hospitals, and wherever else they were keeping it at the time. I didn't see any of them individually as wicked, evil people. I looked at the task that they were given as being, wrong-headed.
Yeah. What about, you were part of the action in Belmont where you guys surrounded the
Yes, I was.
Siting Commission car, so tell me a little bit about that.
So, in preparation for that, we had had all these meetings, and even, I don't know if the training was before then, they brought in some people from I don't know where to what do you do when you get arrested? How do you remain nonviolent? As I recall, we even practiced that. I would say that I knew at least half or 75% of the people who were gathered that morning. So when they finally showed up, we all surrounded the car and then wouldn't leave until Larry Scholes, I think, arrested all of us, or said he was going to. Mm-hmm. And of course, everybody knew Larry Scholes. He was a really nice guy. He was just doing his job. Nobody, said that he was a pig or anything like that. I remember people in the courthouse office buildings had opened the windows and they were all sort of clapping. And then I remember he took us all into the jail or wherever that place was and sat us all down. And then I do remember I said, well, Larry, could you process me first because I have to start seeing patients at 11. and yeah, he did, and I don't think anybody was really arrested that day. I think they just sort of let us go.
Yeah. What was the reaction of the sighting commission within the car? Did they interact with you guys at all?
No, not that I remember.
Okay.
It was, in some ways it was probably ill-conceived. We didn't know if any of them had any, medical problems, if they had to pee or anything like that.
I remember there was a discussion about what to do. I read
Yeah.
in the text if somebody has to use the restroom.
Yeah. It didn't last long.
Yeah.
Larry handled it, I think, pretty well, and I don't think our expectations were high, like they were going to say, okay, we give up,
Right.
or pull out a gun and start shooting. It was theater.
Make your point known.
It was just really to make a point, and then get back to what you had to do that day.
Right. Wow.
Arrested, including the county's health consultant.
When the public health department came down here, they stated that this facility, the way it's proposed, would pose a health threat to the people of the southern tier. A small one, but a real one.
And one of my favorite parts of reading Linked Arms is about your role. I think one of the first main actions on site, the Allen site, where you were driving around with, what is it?
George Riken.
What's that?
I think it was George Riken.
Riken or Marilyn Ostrander?
Oh, it was Marilyn Ostrander.
Yeah.
It was her house.
Okay.
I would say, excuse me for 1 month.
Oh, go ahead.
So I have a souvenir for you.
Oh, yay!
Yay.
Love to see it.
So here's the souvenir.
Oh, those are the handcuffs? Oh my god.
So I've kept them for 30 years.
Oh my god, yeah, they're so heavy. Not like the
But, I don't know
things.
if
That's very cool. Very nice.
So we had, prepared.
I'm gonna put these right
Okay.
here so it'll be in the shot.
My recollection is a lot of these preparatory meetings were through either Steve Myers or Stuart Campbell or Spike or
Yeah.
one of them. But anyways, they divvied us up into teams, and we went up to the Allen site, and and I believe it was Marilyn Ostrander's home. And the plan was, if we saw anyone that we thought was them, to go out and chase them, and
handcuff yourself to them?
and handcuff them to a tree, or it was not really specified, but everybody had handcuffs.
And that was mostly a delay tactic until like everybody could converge on that site? Is that?
Yeah, and I think again it was theatrics. I think their plan was just to sort of put their mark on the sites. They didn't have any equipment. It's not like they were going to take soil samples or anything.
Well, there was snow on the ground.
I don't
at
think
the
there was
time.
snow. It was cold. So we were there and having some rolls and coffee or something, and this car went by, and so Marilyn and I took off and started chasing them, and then we saw that the car had stopped, and that they were kind of halfway up a field towards the woods. So I told Marilyn to go back and get other people, and I would go in the woods and chase them down.
And chase them down, right?
Which
So,
I did.
What did you find when you got there?
So when I got there, it's like the dog chasing the car. What do you do when you get there? Well, nobody really went over what you were supposed to do. So I had on a trench coat. I had these in my pocket. And I started yelling at them and asking them questions. Not really, just haranguing them. And they kept walking. I got right in front of them, and then they would walk around me. There was like, 5 of them or something like that. And they kept going so I tried to make as much noise as I could so somebody would know where we were. And I decided that at some point, I'm going to handcuff one of these guys. So I started looking around. I didn't know anybody who was who. And I tried to pick out the one who I thought looked most like he wasn't going to punch me or anything. And I was just about to do it, and I can't recall if I thought better at the last moment, because it would have been a stupid thing to do. It would be assault. And I didn't have a key. Or that I saw that other people were coming. I backed off, and fortunately for me, the person that I was going to handcuff was Craig Brack, the county historian, who was, documenting this all. I don't know, have you talked to him?
I haven't, but he's on my list, definitely.
You should talk to him, yeah. And I told him this before, that I was, a second away from handcuffing.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been really foolish. That would have looked really bad. And then, as I recall, when we came out of the woods, then there were other people there. They went to get back their car, and then we surrounded them. And again, another kind of Mexican standoff.
Yeah. So you stayed even after they had come out to the road and surrounded, because I know that was like very cold and lasted like several hours, right?
It lasted it was very cold, and it lasted several hours. And people would periodically drop out, and somebody else would take their place. But it was made so that there was no way they could get through there.
Well, was that the time that the Citing Commission got charged with trespassing, so they got onto the wrong property?
It was the guy, as it turns out, it wasn't even the Ostranders' property. It was the pizza guy in Wellsville who ran the Pizza King, whose name, I forget what his name was. I didn't know him. But they were on his property, and my recollection is that somebody contacted them and asked if he would prosecute them for trespassing, and I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But, I mean, many of the state police were people I know.
Yeah.
Personally. So
that's what's
it
interesting.
was always a little weird. Like, I never felt that any of the police, the local police or the state police, were, gung ho. We got to do this, and you people are all crazy. It's like they had sympathy for us, and they knew who we were, and that most of us were not perpetual troublemakers or anything like that.
Yeah. So was this something that was very different for you, or did you have prior experience with protesting something? Or
Well, everybody did. We grew up in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us, and participated in anti-war stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the roots of that were there.
Yeah. I would say I had a lot of experience in those things. Or just showing up at marches and all that sort of stuff. I never gotten arrested.
Was it something that you carried on after this movement? Did you follow some other, things that you're passionate about to try to?
Yeah, the Iraq War thing, and I would certainly do it again. That kind of stuff. Yeah. I would not
handcuff yourself to anybody.
I wouldn't. I realize that there's, legal protest is good, but at one point there was. I even forget the names of them. There were concerned citizens, but then there was the other group.
The ACNAG. Yeah.
ACNAG. That I did go to their meetings. I wasn't always comfortable with, what they had suggested, like monkey wrenching things, ruining equipment, putting sand in gas tanks, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That started to get uncomfortable for me.
Sure. And I'm sure, with your position in the community, that would have been problematic.
It was problematic. Early on in the movement, at that time, I was the medical consultant for the county health department, and I put an ad in the local paper, on the Sunday paper, like a half-page ad. I remember back then it cost about, $250. So it was pretty big for that time. About the issue, and my take on that was the one of informed consent. That is that, and we actually even developed a scientific committee. We had some meetings, we had stationery, but to compare the risk of having a dump, the medical risk of having a nuclear waste facility in our county to other commonly assumed risks like tobacco, like immunizations, and I forget other ones, but low-level risks that we routinely accept, but most of them require consent, and I tried to put it in perspective that they're asking, especially the people who live near there, to maybe assume a small health risk, and that required consent from the county.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think a fraction of the people involved in the protest wanted to say, oh, we're going to start having, like thalidomide. It's going to be an awful health catastrophe for the county. What they were proposing, short of an accident, there would be really very minimal type of risk. But to me, the social political thing was more real than I didn't see it as like putting thalidomide in the water, or some other more definable large risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did get, I think at one point the county told me, don't use my title anymore.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I was not speaking for them, and I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't take out any more ads in the paper or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say was the best part about that time for you?
To me, the best part was that the community, got together. It wasn't just a flash in the pan. This went on for, I think, a couple of years before it ended, and involved a lot of hard work of gathering information about what the waste facility was going to be, about the and during this time there's something called the Beer Report. Do you know about that?
Yeah, I've read
Biological effects of ionizing radiation, which it was issued periodically every 2 or 3 years, and there was a new report issued during that, which somewhat lowered the level of. And I know most of the work that went on I didn't do, but everybody brought what their expertise was, what time they could afford to organize this and put aside differences that they had, to do these actions, which in some ways seemed kind of crazy. I know at that time my youngest son sort of had a meltdown one night, saying he thought, "Oh, you're both going to get arrested, and then what's going to happen to me?" Yeah, but the best part was the community.
And on the opposite side of that,
Yeah, what was the worst part?
Yeah.
The worst part for me is, we said no to that, and we got no, but we didn't say yes to anything. Nothing went further. It didn't change the world. But then sometimes that's all you can do to try and change things is, to say no, and then they go somewhere else or something else happens. But it's not like it sparked the, something positive, because, okay, nuclear power, a lot of the nuclear diagnostics have been replaced in medicine anyways, but in science, well, they still use a lot of radionuclides. But nuclear power, people are, some serious environmental people are now saying, well, nuclear power, not so bad. I don't think climate change was really a big issue back then. You know, and it's not like anything good happened from it. So this is, you know, something positive.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I never thought about it that way before. But trying to, like, riding on that energy to actually...
Yeah, but I mean, but realistically, okay, what could we do? We're just
Sure.
a small little county up here with no political clout or anything.
Exactly.
It would have been nice if somehow we had also done, you know, something really great in the county to reduce usage at that time.
Yeah.
And the county has done a good job at some things, you know, the recycling stations
Sure.
and,
Yeah.
and all that. But to me, that was the disappointing part of it. It was just a no. We didn't solve, you know, the problem of where does it go.
Yeah. Exactly. Do you have a favorite memory about this time? Maybe it's the same.
Yeah, maybe the last thing, the Kenny Adia thing with the masks.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people have showed you maybe some people still have them. I
To
don't.
touch the actual mask before.
Yeah, that was pretty. That was pretty good.
And were you at
I was
that?
not at the. I was at the front. I was at the back. You know,
Yeah.
I had no reason to be in the front. I had to leave by 11 to go see, you know, patients.
Yeah.
But watching the people come in on horses, which I'm sure you've
Oh, you
talked to
did see
Glenn.
that part. Yeah.
Yeah, and the old, you know, the old people, the grandfathers of the future, the parents of the future. A number of them were my patients, my neighbors. You know, that was pretty big. That communities have power, and relationships have power. And it's disappointing to me that things are so polarized now. I don't know if this would happen now.
That's one of my questions. So yeah, so you have doubts about whether Allegany County could pull together again in that same way?
Well, there's, you know, how do you get along with people who don't think exactly like you, you know, and in fact, how do you join them to do something, even though you disagree on other things? We're so prone to, you know, things or people that we disagree with now to categorize them into.
You don't think that was true at the time? Because there was such a diversity of people involved in those
I think it was
events?
way less.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, you didn't have to love everything about somebody to join them in a movement, you know, and even, you know, even put your, you know, some trust in them and put yourself on the line.
And now we're almost like defined by our
Yeah.
stance on certain issues.
We are.
I agree with you. Was there anybody that you found particularly inspiring or influential that was connected to this movement?
So there were a couple of people that I came across in the movement that were really eye-opening for me. One was, I forget his name now. He was the chief, maybe not the chief, but he was an epidemiologist. He was a PhD, as I recall, at Roswell Park.
Okay.
Who we talked to regarding what are really and you know, we were looking around at that time for experts. None of us was an expert in anything, you know, who could help us with our scientific arguments. And he introduced me to this concept of, it's called healthy worker bias. That is, if you do a study, let's say on workers, and it shows a certain effect of something, that's not estimating, that's not a legitimate estimate you can take into populations. Because, why? Workers are healthy.
True.
And that his point was a lot of the radiation studies were flawed because they were done in people who worked and had exposure, because, you know, they had to wear badges. And so you could get better data from that. And we had him down once or twice to, go over our arguments and all that. And he never did anything officially for us, but it was really, to me, it was really interesting to learn about all this epidemiology stuff that I sort of knew vaguely, but and he was a man of substance. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name.
Oh, it's okay. I might even be able to look that up.
And the other person was Ted Taylor,
Yeah.
who I met on numerous occasions, and even after it was all over, I had dinner with him one night at actually the Marx's.
Yeah.
You should talk to Megan Marx. She actually has written a novel about that involves a lot of nuclear stuff. So she did a lot of research about
Awesome.
Ted Taylor. Who told us a lot about. A lot of it had nothing to do with the movement here, but about the scientists who work for Los Alamos. I think that's where he was. And in that whole movement of people, the scientists who had brought the nuclear fission technology into existence for the bomb, and then many of them had turned, against it or had second thoughts about what they had unleashed. He was an interesting guy. He was a lonely guy.
Let's see. Did the protests go differently than you imagined when you were starting out in this?
No, it's amazing to me that they went almost as planned.
Nice.
The idea that back then, when there was no internet, there were no cell phones, that somehow you could get information that they were going to be at this place and that people would get there, and that like the thing in Allen, that we would actually see them and go out and, that it worked.
Yeah.
It's, in some ways, it could have been just a real dud.
Well, maybe a little bit of luck in there too, right?
The luck, but each action that we had, and then there was another action where, I don't know, there were 5 sites, and the site I was at, they didn't show up at, but they showed up at one of them. Mm-hmm. And
So you had to have people everywhere.
we had to have people everywhere, and we just hung out, and it was sort of kind of a nothing. But we spent 3 or 4 hours doing that, and I met some great people. A lot of people from Houghton participated. And,
That's cool.
yeah, it was good. It's amazing to me that it did happen, and that it didn't get out of hand, and that we came off, since this was all theater in some ways, that we came off as the good guys.